Life travels in circles, and there are peaks and valleys on the circle. And this is an opportunity for humanity to expand their consciousness and to find peace and to live as one and to interface with, communicate with, and become friends with the galactic beings who are there and who are always there. And they are, to a large extent, humanity in a higher perspective and a higher frequency of reality. And this is an important time for people to start looking into their own higher frequencies of reality. Because the challenges that are here now in the third dimension, they're not going to be able to be healed very easily through the third dimensional consciousness. People are going to really have to step up their consciousness and start thinking about the fact that humans are supposed to be the protectors of the planet. And the Arcturians are saying this as well, that this is a time for humans to realize that humanity is supposed to be the caregiver of the planet. And the planet needs some caregiving. We, the Arcturians, would like to say to all the humans that this is your now to step up and put the planet first. Because if the planet doesn't come first, you are beginning to see the kind of damage that can occur. If you don't have a planet to live on, what happens to humanity? Would you like to speak to that a bit, Danny?
This is a similar concept to if you live in a house, you would take care of your house. You wouldn't leave the stove on, right? So It's really the same thing with being on the planet. And the reason why the planet comes up so much is at the end of the day, no matter who you are or why you're incarnated here, you're here. And that is that here that we all have in common, no matter who we are. And finding common ground with each other is a pretty hard thing to do with all the polarity and all the division that we do have in our reality right now. So perhaps you, the Arcturians, could touch a little bit about that.
Yes. Finding common ground has a lot to do with the humans that are the leaders within that now. And if there is a strong, loving, higher frequency, tuned in leader, then that's like a good parent. And the good parent makes sure that everybody is taken care of, that everybody gets to have their say and everybody has what they do and they work together as a team, that they're part of a bigger purpose, that it's not just about one person or even one family. There are humans on the planet that are very dark and they have lost their ability to experience love and light. And they have instead taken all of their love and put it onto money and possessions and fame. And there are many people that have fame that use their fame really well to help and assist others. But there are others that don't do that. And there are some people in higher places that are really working to help the planet, but then there are some people in higher places that could care less about the planet and is not doing anything about it and hasn't throughout the entire time that that person had that ability to make a good change. And it really comes down to the humans. It comes down to each one person. And I remember, Danny, when we were first met, we were talking about how we remembered the fall of Atlantis. This is so similar to the fall of Atlantis, isn't it?
It truly is. And I know that everyone remembers that differently and remembers different aspects, or even if you don't have a memory of it, thinking about the fact that it almost feels like some of this has happened before. This feels familiar. This feels like a familiar kind of challenge. It might feel new at the time because it's the first time that we might be experiencing these challenges in this lifetime.
Yeah.
But you also might feel there's like an energy to that too of, there's multiple ways to think about this. There's multiple perspectives to see this from. So with the fall of Atlantis, I feel that with everything happening so quickly, so fast paced, I mean, we just entered this whole age of Aquarius. Now it's like, shoot, here are the fires. They need to go out eventually, but they're not going to stop until we get this right. And we don't get this right unless we do this together.
Yes, we do this together, and people need to choose leaderships not based on whether or not they have money. They need to choose leaderships on whether or not they have a love for the planet and they have a knowing for the planet. And they are trying not to get political, but there's not a lot of that going on. In the United States, at least.
This brings up an important topic of finite versus infinite. And where your focus is at is what's going to determine your reality. And what I mean by that is that if you keep all your focus on how much money can I get, how much materials can I have, you're looking at something that isn't going to last forever, because at some point it's going to go. We are only here for a finite amount of time. And so when you shift your perspective to go inwards and you look at that infinite part of yourself, then you start to see the finite parts of your third dimensional reality a little bit differently, because now you have an evolved perspective, because you chose not to focus just on the material, but you focused on that soul aspect, that energy aspect. And there's no right or wrong way to do that, but it does change something within you.
Yes, it definitely does change something within you. And if one is able to see themselves as the caregiver of the planet. Now, this is the middle of the storyline now, because, great damage has already started, and amazingly courageous people have threatened their lives, and I'm sure many have lost their lives. The firemen are like heroes beyond heroes going down in those horrible fires. So there's times like these that the good and the bad, so to speak, that which is like a horrible, horrible thing, where all this land and houses and all these things are being destroyed, which is like a horrible sad. And then on the other hand, there's these amazingly courageous people that go down inside of the fire to put the fires out and to help them go away. So is this not the good and the bad right there for everyone to see? Maybe you can talk to that a bit, Danny.
That's a wonderful point. There's a polarity right there. There's the dark, and then there's the light. And you really can't have one without the other. It's more about bringing things into balance. And that balancing act is not always pretty. You're not always going to be able to stay balanced. There's always going to be a tilt one way or the other. But we do find that equilibrium when we do go inside, and when we do shift our perspectives of not just the world around us, but also of how we see ourselves. Do you see yourself as an important person? Do you see yourself as someone who can make a change and who can make an impact? And even if you don't know the specifics of what that could be or how that even is a possibility. It's there within you. That potential is there within you, just waiting to come out. And there's no right or wrong place for you to be to have a difference to make. It's just that you are going to where you feel like you can make the most impact, or where you can make the most beneficial change. And that comes from an authentic place. So if you want it to be an authentic, real transmutation, then you have to do that within yourself first, and that brings the energy forward.
Yes, it's like energy out is energy back. So if you're just frightened and scared and worried and what will I do? Oh my gosh, oh no, you know, that's what comes back, and it becomes that circle of fear creates more fear, creates more fear, creates more fear, as opposed to, all right, this is indeed very frightening. And that's from the human perspective. But we want the whole perspective. How about the forest perspective? How frightening is it to the forest? You know, humans sometimes think, oh, it's just a tree. But, you know, if you're a tree hugger like I am, you know, trees are alive. Trees are alive beings. And trees are so vital because they go down into the earth and they stabilize. And underneath them, you think, oh, look at that tree, look at the big roots on the top. Those roots go down and all over and mix with other roots. And trees are vital. And so many trees have had to sacrifice their lives throughout these humongous fires. And we need to thank those trees and for their sacrifice, and know that whenever one is in the woods, that is what they need to protect.
Yes, and that is showing that we value all life. And realistically, that is the perspective of a higher dimensional being. Being able to not only value, but also to recognize that there is more life than just the humans. And we might be the most evolved species on this planet, but there are still other beings, like the animals, the plants, the trees, like you were saying, that need that extra focus in this now, because they're still alive. They still have a part being here. They're supposed to be here. And we can't just have one without the other. We can't have humans without the plants. We can't have animals without the humans. We can't, you know, everything interplays with each other. So it's finding the way, the balance to working with the planet, because we are a part of the planet in order to make a better change, not seeing ourselves as separate.
Yes, there is a responsibility to being human, because, you know, the supposedly most evolved species is the species that is to be the protectors of all the other species. But humans lost that. Now, not all humans lost that, but too many humans lost that because they weren't able to remember that it is their responsibility to take care of the earth in whatever way they can take care of the earth. There is a lot of courage that rises from very difficult times. Would you like to speak to that, Danny, about the courage part?
Well, with that courage, I mean, yes, to those firefighters that are bravely going in and actually being on the front lines, it really shows you how far people are willing to go in order to make sure that others are safe. And others includes the plants and the animals as well. They're not just doing it for the people, they're doing it for everybody. And that can give us a really good streak of inspiration of where can we find courage in the challenges in our own life that maybe we weren't expecting, but all of a sudden they just got ignited, and now we have options. Do we want to panic and fear and run in circles, or do we want to assess the situation and bring up that inner courage from within and decide from a higher perspective, okay, what needs to be done and how can I find the courage to do whatever that may be, knowing that you have the ability to make a difference or to affect the outcome or to play a role in the solution is very awe-inspiring. It's very uplifting. It can give you a lot of confidence, but with that confidence has to come the courage to apply it.
Yes, and also the unity of humanity, realizing that they are the keepers. Walk softly on the earth. That's what we've got to learn, and we're really learning it the hard way. But we have a higher perspective of ourselves in the fifth dimension, in the higher fourth dimension and in the fifth dimension. And so we have our higher dimensional selves that can really guide us through these challenging times.
What a wonderful reminder to draw back on our higher selves and to know that that is not another being coming in through us, but it is us. We're just resonating to a higher frequency and we're bringing that forward. So anytime someone is channeling or someone is going within, that is when you get in touch with your higher self. And that really brings this conversation, I think, to a nice full circle, kind of like we were talking about in the beginning. So I would just want to ask one more question to the Arcturians. Can we get like a sit rep of planet Earth right now from the ship's perspective and what they're seeing?
Oh, interesting. Yes. Oh, boy, it's very sad. We Galactics are very sad. We're very sad for what has happened to this beautiful planet. And we're very sad for what has happened to so many beautiful people. And as we look down, we see that more and more people are like growing up, realizing that the planet is vulnerable. And being a human, it is their responsibility to take care of it. It is their responsibility to not go into places that are pristine and beautiful and not need to have 50 pictures of it, to just be there in the great aura of that beautiful place. And don't let anyone know that you were ever there. When you come to a place on nature, make sure that when you leave, it's exactly how nature was before you came there. And humanity is so fortunate to be able to have the experience of living on this beautiful planet. But darkness is always the challenge. The darkest night is just before dawn. And this is definitely a darkest night that we're going through right now. And that darkest night means that everyone takes a moment and goes inside and says, how can I help? Love them free, love the woods free, heal the woods, just like if you had a best friend that was sick. And what would you do? You'd want to have good thoughts about that best friend. You'd want to send them love and light. And so that's what you're doing now. The best friend is Gaia. Gaia is your best friend.
So the first question that we have is, I really would like to know what the so-called event is, the event. Is it the inner landings that Sue spoke about, or what will happen in this moment?
Well, there are people that are meeting galactics, but they don't meet galactics like they don't meet at the local restaurant and sit down and have a drink. No, they have to go into their own highest state of consciousness, and they have to believe in themselves that they are good enough. They have to believe in themselves that they could reach that state of consciousness. And they have to know that whatever they receive from the higher frequencies does not come to them, it comes through them. It's not that the higher realms of reality are going to speak to one person. They'll speak through a person that will share that information in a loving, honest, caring, dedicated fashion. And so if any of you, if you feel like, well, how come I don't get to talk to them? Because it's not about you talking to them. It's about them talking through you.
So from that perspective, it really sounds like this event is a multidimensional experience. So it wouldn't make sense for it to just happen in the physical. Going within is how you get started on perceiving what that event would be. And not only that, but how you play a role in that quote unquote event.
Yes, because the higher dimensional beings, they are able to perceive the frequency of reality that a group of humans have. And so if there is a group of humans that have their guns loaded and they're, heading towards the sky, then they're not going to show themselves there. They're not going to show themselves if they have harmed someone or someplace. It's about a frequency of consciousness. It's in order to perceive the higher perceptual realities, one needs to be able to match their state of consciousness with that frequency. And so the ones who, meditate and send out light and love and do good for others and care for other beings, they will be able to communicate with the higher dimensional beings, because the higher dimensional beings know that these are people that will pass on the information that was sent to them in a loving, kind way, and to not try to take credit for, this is what I said, or I got this. No, having that energy field run through you is enough. You don't need the congratulations from everybody else. You don't need people to say, oh, you're wonderful. In fact, that's kind of a distraction. We want to be known not for who we are, but for what we have to give.
Wonderful. All right, let's go ahead and do one more question. So I remember my past life, which was not in Earth, and I've seen several ships throughout my life. So how do I find out who my galactic family is and what my experiences mean as far as who my galactic family actually is?
Well, I, Sue, will tell you exactly what the Arcturians told me. They said that you create a cast in steel, time and place. And you go to that place at that time, and you meditate, relax, you go inside, and then you open up your computer. Then you sit down at your computer and you say, what would you like to say through me